Welcome back to the latest edition of the Outdated Entertainment Hour. I am your pregame host, Bob Fopp. This time, once again, they go slumming on this show. Bob Smith, Brian R. Solomon, and Craig Peters take a look back at the world of comic books. Can you imagine? And a look at two of the comic book-based current films that are burning up the box office. Comic books. Can you imagine the mindset of a person who reads comic books? I saw that in a movie once. In any event, put down those magazines and sit in your seats properly. We're about ready to pull up the curtain on the Outdated Entertainment Hour. All right, you're being dismissed from the auditorium. You in the Bluto t-shirt, out. Hey, everybody, it's Bob Smith, and welcome back to the Outdated Entertainment Hour. We hope everyone is in fine fettle right now. We got a big one this time. It's a long but fun show about the history of comic books. Well, not really the history. It's the love of comic magazines through the eyes of three people who collected them in their formative years. And I got two of the smartest guys I know on the show. Former Pro Wrestling Illustrated editor-in-chief Craig Peters, and current PWI writer, as well as the host of the Shut Up and Wrestle podcast, as well as a current PWI writer, and also a current author of some fantastic books. He's going to talk about one of them on the show. His name is Brian R. Solomon. And we're going to look back at the history of those wonderful, somewhat three-quarter size magazines we all grew up loving. The superhero genre, of course. And we're also going to talk about the current Fantastic Four and Superman films that are burning up the box office as I record these words. So get yourself, let's see now, about some lemonade. It's summer, and I really feel alive. That's for the SCTV fans out there. But anyway, get yourself something to drink. We're going to have a nice, long chat about good old greasy kid stuff. We will be back in just a couple of seconds. Don't you dare go anywhere.
This is Joe Walsh. One thing I do when I'm not playing rock and roll is get on the air as an amateur radio operator. Also called ham radio, is a communication service provided by ordinary people just like you and me. We have a national emergency communication system in place 24/7, 365. Find out more about amateur radio at arrl.org/What is ham radio? See you on the air.
All right. The trio is back. We just did a show on Brian Solomon's great podcast, and we talked about the death of Hulk Hogan recently. If you haven't checked that one out, you really should. It's called Shut Up and Wrestle. It's an Arcadian Vanguard podcast. And once again, we welcome back to the Entertainment Hour, the well-rounded Brian R. Solomon. How you doing?
Thanks for having me back. This is like my home away from home. I love coming on this show because I get to talk about other stuff. Believe it or not, I actually have other interests besides wrestling. So
you don't know how many times I've quoted you on my own show. So like Brian R. Solomon says, man does not live by wrestling alone.
Yes.
And I live by that credo too. And here's another guy in the middle here, as I look on our screen. He is the world-famous, world-renowned former editor-in-chief of Pro Wrestling Illustrated back in the 80s, 90s. Do I have my timeline right? Is that That's right.
Yeah, 81 to 96.
Yeah, it's Craig Peters. Everybody knows him. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. It's great to be here again with you on the Outdated Entertainment Hour, and with you, Brian, once again, twice in the last week or so. I'm honored, of course, to be here with two giants of podcasting, as far as I'm concerned, the Johnny Carson and David Letterman of podcasting, and I'm fulfilling my goal of becoming the Orson Bean of podcasting by joining you guys once again. So
Great.
happy to be
All right,
here.
which one of us is Carson? You have to be Carson. You're more of the suave.
Well, Carson's the older one, right? So,
Yeah, but that would make me Carson. Okay, all right, fine.
right. That's what I thought. I don't know.
I'll take his yearly salary. He's the highest paid guy on TV for a while, right?
He was.
And I have to say, apropos of nothing, that has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today, but because I didn't say this last time we were all together, Craig, anytime I'm watching old wrestling from the 80s, some old event, anytime I can spot your afro and Bill's comb over
Oh.
just roaming around ringside between the two of you guys were like the Zelligs of professional wrestling. It's absolutely
so
incredible.
Cringeworthy. It's
I'm
so
like,
cringeworthy.
how
for me
did
to
you
see
guys
those.
get everywhere? It doesn't matter where it is. It'll be Atlanta, Dallas, New York,
Florida, St. Louis, yeah.
and there you guys are. And sometimes George Napolitano's ambling around,
Oh, yeah.
you know, doing his thing, or like you guys just went everywhere. It's incredible. It really.
But I
is
always
incredible.
notice, especially the Garden, you and Apter right in the front of the, right at the front of the ring where we're looking, our bird's eye view is looking at you guys. But Napolitano would be on the left, on the right, next to you guys, over on the other side.
All over the place.
He was a roamer. He'd roam all over the ring.
Right.
And in early 81, 82, like the very first shows that I shot there, you'll see Paul Heyman at ringside taking pictures.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can spot Cornette at the Memphis shows when he's like 18, 19 years old, running around.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Random things like that. Yeah, for sure. Dennis Brent, who was a great friend of mine, he would always be at the Crockett shows and WCW, and before that, World Class and Mid-South. I worked with him at WWE. He was a great guy. Rest in peace.
Yes.
Anyway, Bob, that's not our topic today, right? No wrestling today.
No, we're not doing wrestling. This is the Entertainment Hour, folks. And we're going to look at the two new movies that featured the Fantastic Four and Superman, and how accurate they are in terms of bringing back that old Silver Age comic book feeling. I think they both do a bang-up job in that regard. And all three of us have seen the Fantastic Four film, and Brian has seen Superman. And we're going to talk about all these things. Brian, why don't you start, since you're the one of us that saw Superman, which came out first, which was both of these films debuted at #1 at the box office. So they were proclaiming the demise of the superhero film for a while, and now this summer, bang, they're back with a vengeance.
Well, I had superhero fatigue. I was the first one to admit it because, look, I love comic books. I love superheroes. I wrote a book about them. And when they started going crazy, basically at the turn of the century, cranking out all these superhero movies, it was so much fun. And then the Marvel Cinematic Universe started and all that, the interlocking pieces of the puzzle and everything. But it got to the point where it really was too much of a good thing, I have to say. And I was getting to the point where instead of seeing everything, I was picking and choosing. Like, this doesn't look good. I'm going to miss this one. I don't need to see this. And yeah, these two movies, which I hate to compare them to each other, because, I think I like Fantastic Four a little bit better, which I didn't expect, but I loved both of them. They both got me excited again. One of the worst experiences in a movie theater I have ever had was the last time they tried to do Superman, which was Man of Steel, the Zack Snyder movie. And I felt like yelling at the screen because they had gotten everything so wrong, in my opinion, of what this character means. And this movie, they got it right. They righted the ship. Is it Christopher Reeve? No. Is it the Richard Donner vision? No. I don't think anything, to me, I'm biased, I don't think anything will ever touch that first Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve Superman movie. This isn't that. But this is the best attempt that has been made since those days. And it really, really got me jazzed. And then Fantastic Four kind of came out of nowhere. I was worried that Fantastic Four was going to just collapse at the box office because they're not as well known as Superman. Obviously, they had tried to do it a couple times before, and it was pretty bad. And just, maybe it just was going to get overshadowed. And that was not the case. They've both been huge, massive hits. And it's really good to see because they're both very, very well done, very colorful, God forbid, color. They're joyful. They're exciting. They're good. They're not, they're much better. They're the best superhero movies that we've had in many years, in my opinion, in quite a while.
It's like another Barbenheimer summer. Two great
Yes.
movies. I have not seen the Superman movie yet. I've seen all the previews, of course, and I'm anxious to go see it. I'll have a lot to say about the Fantastic Four movie when we get to it. But I love the casting in the Superman movie, and I love that they brought Crypto in. It just sort of speaks to me of that, like a 1960s flavor, but the comic flavor, not the TV Superman from the 50s or the 60s Batman kind of feeling. It was the
Silver Age
60s
Superman.
DC Silver Age Superman. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's so funny because this is when you just have different types of fans, maybe different generations of people that are maybe just never going to see eye to eye, and they have different expectations of what these things should be. Because I remember leading up to it, people kind of groaning about, oh my God, what is this dog in a cape? And there's a super dog and he's got robots in the Fortress of Solitude. This is the goofiest, stupidest thing I ever saw. And a giant S on the door of the fortress. And I'm going, all the stuff you're complaining about are the things I've been praying and waiting for that somebody would do, and now what I need now, and people laugh at me, but what I need now is the Batman movie. Not that it's going to be like the old TV show, which I love, by the way, but I would love to see a Batman that's a little more wacky and colorful and fun, and it doesn't always have to be so depressing. He could have the blue and the gray with the gold. He could have the giant penny and the Tyrannosaurus Rex in the Batcave, right? He could have that
his trophy room.
That 70s Batman was so good, where it was Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil, where it was like, it wasn't goofy Adam West, which I love, again, I'm going to say, but it also wasn't this like psychotic, super depressed, obsessing about his parents. It was much more like he was suave, he was sophisticated, he was dark and edgy, but he wasn't demented. Like, he had a romantic life. He was an adventurer. He actually enjoyed being Bruce Wayne and Batman. Like, he was much more of he was like a James Bond type of a figure.
Right.
Like almost, he had that vibe to him. And I would love to see that kind of Batman adapted finally.
Yeah, well, he was a real detective.
Yes.
It was Detective Comics where he made his, he made his bones. Sort of a take on the Shadow. There's a lot of crossover there. You go into the pulps. The Shadow and Batman, that Venn diagram has a lot of crossover. So, yeah, it's a very noir, but almost procedural detective kind of thing versus, like the self-loathing angst. Why am I doing this? That's a lot.
Because I think what people forget, I know we're not here to talk about Batman, I guess, but whatever. The thing with Batman is the whole, because even on the old Adam West show, they mentioned once or twice that his parents had been killed. He actually mentions it on the show that his parents were gunned down in a senseless act of violence, right? He's done, because the idea was that was just supposed to be a MacGuffin. All it was meant to be was, we have this character, he's got to have a motivation, he's got to have a reason to do this. Okay, well, his parents were killed by a mugger, and he saw a bat and got scared, and okay, now let's just move on from that and let's tell some really great stories. Instead, thanks to Frank Miller in the 80s, it just became this obsessive thing that is just never-endingly revisited. My mommy and daddy are dead. My mommy and daddy are dead. It doesn't have to be like that. He doesn't have to be this broken character. But that's all we've had now for like 40 years, that I think you got young people that just think that really is all that Batman is.
Yeah, and the reason I stopped looking into cinematic superhero movies, there's two reasons. Number one, they're either noisy or dark. Like a whole movie about the Joker? Really?
Right.
All
They
that
had
was, all
3
that was
different Jokers.
no, but I mean the movie The Joker, to me, that
Yes,
was
I know.
lessons for troubled youth to act out. That's what
Yeah,
that
no.
was. So I didn't appreciate it.
No, too dark
Secondly,
for me. I don't need
either
that.
that or
No
it's
way.
all noise. The second Avengers movie sounds like my garbage truck in the morning. It's like 2 hours, 2 hours of or 3 actually, close to it, of tumult, and
Well,
it was eye and ear jarring.
one thing I'll say about that, and I even had to come to grips with that, even in these movies that I loved, Superman and Fantastic Four. That's just the way they make these movies now. You know, I miss one thing I miss is when you watch something like Superman the movie, let's say, like it has this kind of epic feel to it and this very kind of stately pace, like things are given a chance to breathe. There's not a huge amount of action. There's not these 45-minute scenes of things exploding. But in fact, the most important thing in the movie is him and Lois Lane. It's more important than anything else that's happening, really. He doesn't even fight anybody in that movie. But now when they make these movies, they have to have these extended action scenes. I mean, this Superman movie, as much as I loved it, man, it's like made for, I guess, people with ADHD or something. I mean, there is so much flying at you every second, and some of it are very important plot points and things, and it's just just flying past your head. And you know, I'm getting old. I'm not used to movies that are paced that way. But having said that, though, I mean, they pulled it off about as well as you could in a movie like that. I wish they could have. I feel like a wrestling critic. I wish they would have allowed it to slow down a little bit. Sometimes let things breathe, let things register and mean something a little more. But again, that's just how they make these movies today.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're making them for different audiences, and I'm kind of interested in what you guys think about this, because I know, like, when I go to these movies, and I am just context here. Um, I am a comic book guy from all the way back. I mean, I
Mhm.
started in 1968. Bought everything off the shelves. I know you guys are the same. To me, when I go to a superhero movie, and particularly the Marvel movies, because I bought everything, but I was mostly a Marvel guy growing up. When in Civil War, when they had that battle scene at the airport, and you had, you know,
Yeah. Yep.
the superheroes on one side, the superheroes on the other side, and there's that moment where they're both gearing up together, and the fight's just about to begin. It was like, and I'm getting chills even just thinking about it, talking about it. It was like,
I
Mhm.
know.
holy crap, my 12-year-old self, that's the cover of the Avengers Annual.
I had
That's these guys ready to beat the crap. It was that sensibility that I felt when I was 12, 13 years old, transferred onto the screen, and I was a kid again watching this in all of the best ways.
Well, that's why I felt about crypto being introduced to the Superman series, because I remember the comic book introducing crypto. And as a 9, 10, 11-year-old, I went, wow, and I bought the comic. I wasn't a regular Superman comic because I thought it was the same
Yeah.
story over and over, the same artist and everything. So we're talking 66, 67, where it was like, the do-gooder
Swan.
Superman stuff. But yes, Kurt Swan, yeah. But the thing is, I love the idea of crypto. Everybody loves their dog, and imagine a super dog with Superman. I love the whole
Right.
concept. So I had a feeling that it would be a little lighter in its presentation this time. Was it at all between the fight scenes?
Yeah, I mean, you mean the new Superman?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely from the Zack Snyder version of it, which was so dreary. I hate to harp on that. I don't know if you guys ever saw Man of Steel or Batman versus. I didn't even bother with Batman versus Superman or Justice League. It's just I'm watching this going, if Superman can't be happy about being Superman, then none of us have a chance about, like, why are you so sad? You are Superman, be happy, have some, there was no sense of joy. There was no sense of wonder in that movie. The 2013 one, it was just very grim, and his father, Jonathan Kent, basically commits suicide in order to help Clark to keep his secret rather than have Clark save him in one of the dumbest scenes in any movie I've ever seen in my life. Such a contrast from Glenn Ford in that Richard Donner movie, who was so perfect in that part. And they do it here in a very different way. It's a very different version of Ma and Pa Kent. They're much more kind of like country bumpkins, and not sort of like these these kind of wise, like Norman Rockwell figures like they were in the Richard Donner movie. They're much more like, I don't know, hayseeds. I don't know how else to put it, but it's very moving. The scene that they share, the scene that Clark shares with his adopted father is the emotional heart of the entire movie to me.
Well, you know, what you're speaking of right now is the reason out of all the Harry Potter films, I will always like the first one the best.
Me
because
too.
it had that underlying sense of whimsy to it.
Yes, whimsy,
Of
exactly. That's
childlike
what the
innocence
Silver Age
as
is.
well as the action and well as the drama that happened. Now, by the time they got to I guess the 7th Harry Potter movie is really an adult film with some real killings in it and stuff like that. But to me, I think a comic book movie needs a little bit of childhood in it. It just
Yeah.
does. It
Yeah,
has to, because who were they selling comic books to when these characters were new?
Right.
Children.
All of us got into this because of being kids, and you have to have, there's got to be at least something there for kids to enjoy. The fact that you can't take children to a movie about Batman is one of the most ridiculous things I can't possibly think of. How stupid is that?
Well, I think that's a great word for super whimsy, right? And
Yeah.
like, unless you're a comic nerd or just an old timer that grew up on the stuff, you know, it's forgotten how whimsical a lot of the Superman comics were, right? Not just with Crypto, but you had Mr. Mxyzptlk, which is how that's pronounced. You had the whole Bizarro world, which I loved as a kid. Anytime they had a Bizarro comic out, that just entertained the hell out of me. And then just all the other super family members that were coming along, and there was a lot going on there that was whimsical. It was fun.
Super pets.
Super pets.
I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
like Crypto is just one. There was the super horse, the super cat.
Do we
super
dare talk about
monkey.
Batman's rainbow costume?
There was the Bat Hound, the
was
Bat Mite.
That's right, Batmite.
That Mike. That's
all
right.
that kind of stuff. But I loved the fact that Superman would have the Fortress of Solitude. The way he would get into it was it had this gigantic key. The key
Right.
was like the size of a building, with the idea being he was the only one that could pick it up, so nobody else could get in but him, like that kind of stuff. But when I was a kid was when they came out with, in the 80s, when I sort of was getting into it, they came out with the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is where they collapsed all the different timelines. They started phasing out all the really weird, wacky Silver Age stuff. And then John Byrne did his Man of Steel series, and right after that in the 80s, and it cleaned everything out. And I think at the time, I thought it seemed like a really cool idea. They really streamlined it. They got rid of Supergirl. Superman was the only surviving Kryptonian. They got rid of Bizarro was now a clone. He was not, there was no more Bizarro world. There was no Crypto. It was very much more, kind of serious. The way that they weren't doing a lot of there was no like Superman eating a mountain of cheeseburgers, things like that. But as I get older, I just miss that stuff. I actually enjoy that stuff more. It's just fun.
Geez, I must be Superman.
No, that's a great cover. That's why I don't know if you guys ever saw that. There was a Superman
Yeah, I remember
cover.
that one. Yeah.
I used to have it blown up and like framed on my wall, where basically, like, I guess the idea was Superman's metabolism kicks into such a gear that he has to keep continually eating or he'll die. and he's outside of a McDonald's and they're just cranking out as many hamburgers as they can. And he's just stuffing his face with hamburgers,
Yeah.
I like that stuff. Sue me.
Fantastic Four First Steps kind of does the opposite, right? It plays off the multiverse that the MCU has been building on of late. It takes place on Earth. What is it? 828? 828, which is the birthday of Jack Kirby,
right?
Creator of the Fantastic Four, August 28th. Yeah, the whole feel and sensibility of the Fantastic Four movie to me was like, everybody knows Fantastic Four #1. That's, the classic issue. And then you sort of fast forward to what was addressed in the movie, which was the Silver Surfer Galactus trilogy. the 3 issues where we famously some of Jack Kirby's best work for Marvel, and we're introduced to Silver Surfer, Galactus, and that whole thing. But what happened in between, there was a lot that went on there, and there was a lot of fun, and there was a lot of whimsy that went on there, and they actually touched on it in the movie. They talked about the Red Ghost, and they talked about all these other, and they even had the Mad Thinker, right? And
Mole Man.
Oh yeah, I was really happy to see the Mole Man in this.
So the Mole Man, the Mole Man is Sorry, Bob.
They were explaining like the past battles, and there's one of the earliest comics. Remember that big gooey monster? I forget what it was from the second or third issue.
Fantastic Four #1 with the monster climbing out of the.
They had that in there, and I'm like,
they recreated the cover, which was beautiful.
They did.
I fell in love with the movie right then and there. Bang, done,
and
finished. I can't wait for the rest of it. Yeah,
like Craig, what you were saying about that scene in Civil War and Captain America: Civil War, I had the same thought when I was watching it. That big climactic fight, it really felt like you're finally watching one of those all-out, knockdown, drag-out, like super villains versus superheroes fight scenes from Marvel Comics, which you never really had seen so much before. And they did it again in the Thanos movies and things like that. But in this one, that's what this Fantastic Four movie, it really captured the absolute insanity of those 60s Marvel comics, just that trippy Jack Kirby style where, you're living in a New York City where at any moment the Mad Thinker might show up and try to take over the city, or the Mole Man. What is it, Bob? The Mole Man tries to steal the MetLife building or something.
That's about right. Yeah,
like,
Pan Am building.
The Pan Am building, right? He like drags it under the city, and the minute it started like that, I was losing my mind. My wife is looking at me like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm going, "It's the Red Ghost." Just the fact that they would throw all that out there, and there's even a throwaway scene in the beginning where they show the United Nations. And they're going how, the Fantastic Four convinced the entire world to disarm, and they achieved peace, and with only one nation abstaining, and they pan past all the desks of the nations, and the one seat that's empty, it just says Latveria. And I'm losing my mind because it's Dr. Doom, of course. So you could see that coming a mile away, and they put the care into it. I always said, if they were ever going to try to do this Fantastic Four, because they had tried to adapt it before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it was really lackluster. They tried it 2 different times with different casts, and it was really not done right at all. Very disappointing. But I always said, well, okay, if you try to do it now, how do you explain the fact that they've had all these MCU movies and there's been no Fantastic Four if they were supposed to be the first, or are they going to throw that idea out? And I said, the only way you do that is you have to set it in the 1960s and just say, well, maybe they disappeared or something like that. But they did something that was kind of like that. The impression that I got from this is because it's Earth 828, like they're saying, it's not that it's the past of the MCU. It's not. This is a completely different version of Earth that is basically like some type of pseudo 1960s. Because if you noticed, Bob, like, it's not really our world. It's not really our version of the 1960s. There are things in this movie that make you realize you're in an alternate reality. Like in Times Square, they have these giant billboards that are like giant tube television screens, things like that. So it's sort of like the 60s, but through this funhouse mirror, like, wait a minute, they didn't really have that in the 60s.
There's like 1960s technology, but like a 2025 spin on it. Or, it's very interesting mix. The thing that, and you're right, there were several Fantastic Four movies before this one. And it was often said the best Fantastic Four movie before this was The Incredibles. I think fundamentally at its core, what this Fantastic Four movie gets exactly right is that it's a family movie. It doesn't go over the top with superpowers. It's all about the family, which is what the comic was really about fundamentally. I loved, as much as the battle scenes and the fights and all that, I loved the scenes, and this was just, to me, was a direct callback to the way Jack Kirby would open up a new issue of the Fantastic Four with the full page spread of, things sitting in the living room, eating a bowl of cereal or something, and Johnny comes in and he starts teasing them with, shooting fire, whatever. But it was the family life of these superheroes. And boy, this captured it so well. That stuff in the home, the stuff of Ben Grimm down on Yancey Street was great.
Yes.
I loved all that. It just captured as much as it captured the look and feel and the fight and all that. It really captured the flavor and the soul.
And seeing him with the fedora and the trench coat. That's, to me, that's Ben Grimm, the fedora and the trench coat out in public when he doesn't want to really, he's trying not to be noticed. He's like 8 feet tall and about 4 feet wide, right?
And again, to take it back to Jack Kirby, of course, who created Fantastic Four, we won't get into the Jack Kirby Stanley stuff. That's for many other podcasts to pull apart who created what and all that.
I'll say just one thing about that.
Go ahead.
Jack Kirby leaving Marvel was the second worst decision in the history of comics. The first was Bob Kane creating Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse, but that's just my 2 cents on that whole thing. We'll leave it at that. Gee, boss. Oh God.
You know what I hope they get into? One thing they did not get into in this one, which I guess, you don't have time for everything, but I have a feeling this might be something they're sitting on. The whole idea with Ben Grimm of how he's the outsider. Like, he's a monster. The rest of them all look human, and they can pass in human society. He can't change back to Ben Grimm. He always looks that way, and he feels really isolated and really cut off. Like he can't, when his girlfriend, right? Isn't there the whole thing where he falls in love with a woman who's blind, right?
Right. Well, that's what I wanted to point out in the film. His girlfriend was not Alicia Masters,
right?
Who it is in the comic. The girlfriend was named Roz something. The name escapes me at the moment. But the girlfriend was named after Jack Kirby's real life wife, Roz.
Didn't know that. Okay.
And Thing in the comics, Jack always talked that the Thing was maybe the most direct expression of himself in the characters he created. So again, sort of getting back to it's a very Easter eggy kind of thing, but I just sort of love that they paid homage to Jack this way. Having the Thing with a girlfriend down in Yancey Street named Roz, and she's there was sort of the whole Jewish thing was played up, and that was
I was glad to see that.
That was a big part of Jack's personality and what he brought to his work as well. Boy, it was great. It was just such a huge salute to Jack. I will say this though, the one disappointment that I had, because knowing how much Jack was in it and referenced and homage paid and all the rest of it, what I really wanted to see, and maybe I missed it, I don't think I did, was when they brought Galactus on, or when the Surfer came in. I wanted to see some of that Kirby crackle when they were doing the Power Cosmic. Give me those Kirby dots.
Well, they didn't really write the Kirby dots because the Surfer, one of the things, and we could talk about the female Surfer because I have a couple things to say about that, but the Surfer's powers, right, were much more like he had that ability to sort of like manipulate energy. I almost felt like they toned the Surfer's powers down a little bit in this. Like the Surfer could just like fry you basically with these like blasts of energy from his body. And it's a little bit not quite that level of power. I also noticed how when they made the Surfer female, the Surfer. So for those that don't know the story, the original Silver Surfer is Norrin Radd. He's a scientist from the planet Zenla. He agrees to give up his life to work for Galactus in exchange for his planet being spared. And he's always pining after the wife that he left behind on Zenla, which is Shalabal. And in this movie, Shalabal is the Silver Surfer. So I wasn't totally sure why they did that. I thought I knew why. See, what I thought they were going to do was, in the original story, you guys can correct me if I got this wrong, because I did not read it in real time. In the original story, one of the reasons the Surfer has a change of heart is because the Surfer is touched by Alicia Masters. he kind of falls in love with her in a way. I don't want to say, but is just very moved and touched by her purity and the beauty of her spirit. And it causes him to stand up to Galactus. And
Yeah,
you
he
can't,
recognizes the humanity that is
right. You
evident in the
can't
human
do
race.
this.
Yeah.
So what I thought they were going to go in the direction they were going to go in was I thought, okay, well, the reason the Surfer is female now is because they're going to cut out the Alicia character. And instead, they're just going to have the Surfer directly just fall in love with Johnny Storm or the Thing or somebody, or have that type of thing where instead of Alicia, it's one of the Fantastic Four. They didn't quite do that either. It was just, so it left me wondering, why the change? Why the change in that character?
I'll tell you why, because it went over like a lead balloon in the previous film.
Okay, yes, you're right about that, but so did everything else.
Yeah, right. Right.
I mean, you're right about that. I hope that wasn't the reason why, because I love the Silver Surfer, and I would have liked to have. I felt like even the origin of the Surfer was very quickly gone through. Like the sense of this tortured character who had to leave behind everything he knew and loved, and to sacrifice their life for this. And in fact, I think in the original story, right, isn't the Surfer's punishment that he gets banished to Earth? Like, he can't leave the Earth after that.
Yes.
Like, he has to stay there.
It's true.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I mean, Surfer was probably one of my all-time top 5 characters. But I did not think that switching Surfer male to female made any difference. I think
it didn't.
It was kind of like in Doctor Strange when the Ancient One, and there was a lot of uproar about that, making the Ancient One a female. But I don't know. But to me, it worked.
No, it did. I didn't have a problem with it. I'm just not sure why they did it. It didn't really change anything. No.
I'm just going to interject with a comic book memory. The first Marvel comic I ever subscribed to was Silver Surfer. It was hyped in the magazine. Said, subscribe now, avoid a newsstand sellout. You know how it works, Craig, right? So I subscribed. It was my first one. And I couldn't wait. And I got it in the mail, and they folded it. You son of a... It came... The Marvel comics of the 60s were folded.
So I've got there we go.
Yep, that's right.
There he is.
There he is.
Silver
He's
Surfer
holding up
Funko.
Silver Surfer, what are they, Funkos?
Silver Surfer Funko, yeah.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? What, to a comics collector, that was like sacrilege. It's like,
of course.
It's like the baseball card in the back of the pack that had the gum stuck to it. It's just not as good, So I wanted to interject on that. I went to the newsstand and bought another copy. I was so upset.
When I was a kid, when I was at the peak of my collecting in the 80s, they actually relaunched the Silver Surfer series. But what they did was, because this character had been around at that point for 20 years, and he had just been stranded on the Earth for 20 years, basically, this incredibly powerful cosmic character. And they finally got the bright idea. I guess it was Jim Shooter or Tom DeFalco, whoever was the head of Marvel Comics at the time, to finally free him from the Earth. I forgot how it happened, but he was finally freed from his bonds, and he became this totally cosmic character, going from planet to planet, galaxy to galaxy. I adored that comic book. I have almost the entire run still. That's how much I loved that character. And that's also how I learned the whole backstory of the Surfer, because I think he finally goes back to Zenla, and Shalabal is dead, or something really tragic has happened that he just continued to be this tragic character, even though he'd finally escaped the Earth. It's just such a great, great character. I hope that it's not the last of this character. I hope this version of the Surfer reappears. At the end. I don't know how much we're getting into spoilers here, but
no, you shouldn't do that. And I will say this: I get the feeling she'll be back.
Yeah,
I'll put it that way. So another thing I loved about it's just the vibe. It's like you say, it's weird. It's like today and 1967 all at the same time in the film. It's like when they're appealing, it would always appeal to the public. We need to do this. We need your support. We need your, and the whole audience would sit there nodding and going, "Yeah, we could get into this. Oh, we'll help you. We'll help you, Fantastic Four. We're all behind you," which led to a great quote from Craig Calcaterra. Craig, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is on Blue Sky. And here's the quote. I couldn't say this any better. if I made it up myself. He says, I went and saw the Fantastic Four after the deadline closed. It was pretty good. But while I can totally believe in a big rock man and a guy who flies while on fire, I simply cannot accept a world in which the public listens to smart people and mobilizes for the greater good at the drop of a hat. That is perfect.
But you see that is what I love. That is what I loved, is that kind of idealism.
Yes.
Just the shameless idealism in a movie like this, because one of the things that, it's a good idea until they beat it to death. Like, I guess it was Alan Moore in Watchmen who was the first one to do this idea, and Civil War did it too in the comics of, well, what if the world stopped trusting superheroes? What if they started thinking like, well, what would the actual reaction of the public be if superheroes existed? And, well, it would probably be pretty negative, and they probably wouldn't like them or trust them. And, they would run afoul of the government. And that's all well and good. And it made for some interesting stories, but I don't need that to be the story every time. I rewatched the Christopher Reeve Superman movies to prepare for the new one. And there's that sense of like the warden of the prison or the president, and they're saying, well, thank you, Superman. And Superman goes, we're all on the same team. And he gives them a smile and a wink, and he flies off. I miss that. I like that. And they brought that back in this movie, where even though they have the moment where the public stops being, in
Right.
support of the Fantastic Four, but it's earned. It's for a reason. It's for a specific reason. It's not just because, oh, they're superheroes, we don't like them. I think we went too far into that as the default reaction of the public just hating superheroes. I don't think we need to have that in every movie. And it was nice to see in both Superman and Fantastic Four that was not the case, even though in both movies the public does turn against those characters, but it's for a specific reason. It makes sense in the story. That's all I mean, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting quote that you read there, Bob, and it's, it was on Blue Sky, and I assume there's, well, I shouldn't assume that. I mean, it's obviously there's sort of a political sensibility behind saying that.
You think?
But what's interesting is that Superman, I mean, everything gets political blowback these days. It's just the world we live in, and it sucks for 100 reasons. And Superman gets the political blowback because, he's an alien. Oh my goodness. Who knew? Superman's an alien? What? So the Superman movie got political blowback for whatever stupid reasons. Fantastic Four isn't, at least that I'm seeing anyway so far, isn't getting any sort of political blowback. And maybe that's because it does have that 1960s feel to it. People can go to it and look, well, that's not today. That's the way it used to be.
Yeah. Did you catch the Cronkite-like newscaster voice throughout the movie? Very, very Cronkite-like narrator.
It was very, throughout the movie, there was like a very news reporting sort of sensibility to it. Another Easter egg, by the way. So a couple of the reporters in the movie were actually major cast members of the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie.
I didn't know that. I saw that they were at the premiere. I didn't know they were actually in the movie.
They're actually in the movie. As one's a reporter. There's another couple small parts here and there, but yeah, they included them, which is, I love stuff like that.
Good. They deserve that. I remember I've never seen that. I've never seen the Roger Corman one. I remember I was at a convention years ago, one of the first sci-fi conventions I ever went to, and I had in my hands, and this was when it wasn't that easy to get these things, okay, like it is now. In one hand, I had the Fantastic Four Roger Corman movie. In the other hand, I had the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Oh, my goodness.
And I could only pick one, and I chose the Star Wars Holiday Special.
And in your back pocket was the Paul Lynde Christmas Special.
No, I have the Paul Lynde Halloween Special.
The Halloween Special, yeah.
With Kiss. It's phenomenal. I love it. It's great.
And a copy of Skidoo in the other pocket.
Oh my God, Skidoo.
Oh yeah, I forget you're a fellow Gilbert Gottfried Amazing Colossal
love it.
listener,
Love
Greg. Yes. That's right. Skidoo. Man.
Yeah. I'll tell you another thing I really loved about the film was the casting for Fantastic Four. It was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. It was.
I am trying to
Everyone
come
was
up with the
good.
name of the actress who played Sue Storm, who in my mind, she stole the show.
Yes.
To me, without even trying, has nothing to do with the fact that she's a female. I think she took the film over in the second half of it. Her performance was dramatic, funny, loving. It had so many emotions going. I don't want to talk about the plot here in
Yeah.
case our listeners haven't saw the film. But I'm telling you, she was fantastic in this movie, and I think she's a big movie star now. Even if she may have been before, I don't know. But I thought she was wonderful in the role.
I
Yeah,
was
she had a
not
lot to do
familiar.
and did it really well.
I wasn't familiar with any of the actors in the four except for Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal, yeah.
I was not familiar with the other three, but they're all great. They're all very good.
Yeah, well,
And
I mean,
there's so much warmth in this movie. It's an odd thing to say about a superhero movie. These people genuinely love each other,
yeah,
which
Yeah.
is a rarity. There was, if there was any, there was a plot twist where, the husband and wife had a dispute over something really important. I won't say what it was, but but it was natural, and they didn't hate each other for it, and they talked their way through it.
Right.
It's just,
Right.
yeah,
it was
yeah,
really just a very pleasant film for
yeah.
a superhero movie.
The actor playing Ben Grimm, you've seen him in The Bear, if you've watched The Bear,
Oh, my wife watches that.
and
Yeah,
the actress who plays Silver Surfer, you've seen her in Ozark
I have not. I know
or
the show, but I haven't.
Inventing Anna, and she is phenomenally good. It's a shame. I don't think there's a spoiler. Like I would have loved to have seen her do a lot more Silver Surfer, because boy, she could bring an awful lot to the role, and maybe she will in future movies.
Now, one actor I did know, because I'm a big horror movie fan, is the guy who plays Galactus, Ralph Ineson, who is also great in that part, which there was a lot of, practical effects there. I mean, there were pictures they put out online of him actually in the suit. This was not just a CGI thing. They created the
Right.
Galactus suit. They put him in it, and he's got this great voice. For people that aren't familiar with him, he's done a few horror films, like he was in The Witch. He plays the father in that movie where he's like this kind of Puritan. He was in the Omen prequel that came out a year or two ago. He actually plays the priest character from the original movie, the one who is tracking down Damien and gets killed. But he has this real presence and this incredible voice, and he was such a great choice. Definitely an improvement over the Cloud that was Galactus in
Yes.
the Rise of the
The
Silver
Cloud.
Surfer movies. That was so frustrating. Why you would do that, I don't know. But actually, about those original movies, because this is the thing. One thing I'll say is, one thing I love about this new movie is the chemistry between the four characters,
Right.
because they strike this balance, like you guys were saying. They don't always see eye to eye. There's arguments, there's disagreements, but they're a family and they love each other, which really was straight out of the comics, where it was that Marvel dysfunction. They're not just all happy and smiling all the time, but they do love each other. In the movies they made 20 years ago, the ones they did with Michael Chiklis when he was the Thing and Jessica Alba was the Invisible Woman, they tried to pull that off, and it just became, they leaned so far into the dysfunction. I don't know how well you guys remember these movies, that you never got the sense of love. They were just constantly bickering and arguing and yelling at each other. And I knew what they were going for. That's what they were going for, but they
Yeah.
didn't have the balance. You never got the sense that this is a family and they all love each other. It just you didn't feel that. You just felt like they just annoyed each other.
Yeah, and the other thing that I found really impressive about this movie relative to the earlier Fantastic Four movies, and I might have mentioned it earlier, is that you don't see a lot of their powers. I mean, like you do, but it's not front and center and in your face. You don't have Mr. Fantastic sitting on the toilet, using his powers to grab another roll of toilet paper from 3 rooms over.
People were complaining about that, though, that he wasn't stretchy enough in this
He
movie.
wasn't stretchy enough in this.
Yes.
Right.
Well, because in fairness, in the comics, I mean, he's like Plastic Man. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
where he would like wrap his entire body around Galactus like a
Snake.
like a string or something. And
Yeah.
it's definitely, his stretching powers are not quite as as prominent in this movie, but it didn't really bother me the way it seemed to bother people who wanted him to,
Yeah, it felt to me like in the earlier movies, they were trying to put too much of an emphasis on the powers, and it reminded me of like the first Star Trek movie
yeah,
where it spent 20 minutes just looking at the Enterprise in
right,
dry dock.
right,
And it's like,
right.
all right, I get it. All right, you're showing me the powers. All right, I get it. Let's get on to the story. Let's get on to the
I would assume after all these attempts at making Fantastic Four that maybe they felt their audience knew the powers already. But
Yeah,
one thing I did notice is that the bulk of scenes with the powers was the Torch and Sue Storm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sue Storm, and the way they did Sue Storm's force field, wow! I mean, I thought it was fantastic, and I liked the way the Torch was rendered
And
too.
Johnny making the giant four in the sky with his flames. He's got to love
See,
that.
one of the reasons I have problems with a lot of the superhero movies of the past is I can see CGI, and it bothers me.
Yeah.
Like an ocean, it's so obviously an animation, that kind of a thing. I can see it. I can actually see it and go, I'm not enjoying this. This film, I didn't
Which
get that
speaks to
sense
why
about this at
Galactus
all.
is that much better in this. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get that overwhelming, "Oh, this is just CGI," and in fact, I didn't even think of it. I just watched it roll along, and I never had that thought in my head, so they're obviously getting a lot better at this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and, like you said, just the look of Galactus and everything, I'm a big fan of all the cosmic stuff in Marvel Comics. Anytime they get into that's why I love the Infinity Gauntlet. That whole storyline was running when I was in high school, so that's my experience. The whole thing with Galactus collecting the Infinity Stones and like they would been doing in these Avengers movie, that was like the peak of my comic book collecting. So I love all those kind of stories where
Jim Starlin's Warlock.
yeah, Jim Starlin is my hero. Just all those really acid fueled 1970s and 80s things that he would do. Adam Warlock, yeah, love it. Even that's why I'm a big fan of Guardians of the Galaxy because of all this outer space cosmic stuff. I love all that stuff. Yeah. Very trippy.
All right, so let's give our now, Brian, you recommend both films.
I do.
Craig, you recommend Fantastic Four.
Absolutely. I'm going to go back and see it a second time for sure.
As do I, and I will say this: there's a lot of Jack Kirby in this movie, and that's what made me the happiest. I think of everything. There was a quote from it. Well, I shouldn't say what's in it, but there's a lot of homages, shall we say, homages to Jack Kirby, and I found it very pleasing, and that's what helped the movie along for me. Is that I bought these comic books when I was a kid, and it was like, man, this is Grant Ray Lawrence almost, but with better animation.
Yeah, I
Right?
love seeing the comic creators that I loved growing up reflected on screen. And Kirby, of course, in this movie, Kirby in Thor Ragnarok. I mean, his sensibility is all over that.
Oh, that is my favorite. That might be my all-around favorite Marvel movie. I mean, this one is very close. This one might have taken. I need a little perspective. This one might have taken the throne, but Thor Ragnarok. I'm sorry to interrupt, Craig.
It's all
said
good.
that. No, it got me to think this because when Thor Ragnarok came out, I had a friend of mine who was an insane comic book fan like me. And we used to hang around when we were kids and just come up with our own storylines and these crazy ideas. What if this happened? What if that happened? And when Thor Ragnarok came out, I called him up and because we had not really, we didn't see each other too much anymore. I said, this movie, you have to see it because this movie was like the kind of stuff that we used to come up with when we were just laying around in my room. Like, what if Thor shows up on the Rainbow Bridge and they're playing Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song?
Right.
Like, look, those were the kind of things
Right.
we'd think of. And he's swinging the hammer. What if he goes to a planet and he has to fight the Hulk in a gladiator arena? It's like, this is the kind of stuff we would have thought of as kids. It was perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, and there's another scene in I think it's Ragnarok where we're going back to the memories of the Valkyrie, right? Remember, there's that one scene. I can't set it up properly, but it's like a slow motion scene where you have the Valkyrie and there's this battle happening with her and Hela and the whole bit, and it all happens in slow motion. Every time I see that scene, that's Alex Ross. That's
Yes.
Alex Ross's work on film.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then a non-superhero movie example of this, I will watch the opening of the James Bond movie Skyfall just for the opening credits, because to me, that is Jim Steranko on film, the opening
Yeah.
credits. And
Another
I
favorite.
just love seeing like the comic artists that we grew up with, that sensibility being on the big screen. It's just nothing better for me.
Yeah, it's a good time. A good
And
time to be
you
a
know what?
fan.
Distractions my
amazing about
12-year-old
it?
comic itch.
Well, modern audience will say that and go, "How original," and they
Well,
don't
yeah,
know.
right, Doug, yeah.
You know, right? I mean, they'll see something like that and go, "Oh, that's beautiful." Then you meanwhile, oldies like us are going, "Yeah, we know what that's all about."
Yeah, everything's stolen from something.
Yeah.
Kirby
Some level.
Kirby was, I don't know. My favorite comic artist of the Silver Age myself was Neil Adams. I just liked it was a whole new take on comic book art, I thought, when he entered the scene. But Jack Kirby was a perennial. I mean, him and Lee in so many of the books that started out, I mean, that style, all those lines. What I love to do is see a Jack Kirby drawing without ink, like just the black and white sketches, and see how and then when the ink is applied to it, you go, "Holy smokes."
Yeah.
It looks like just a lot of his like, that somebody's wearing a suit or an outfit, it would look like squiggles, but once it's colorized, it was this perfectly formed look for the superheroes, and each one was individual, and he was great at crowds. A Jack Kirby crowd. And by the way, I wanna mention about the Fantastic Four movie perfect '60s use of crowds. The crowds were like
That's right.
right? The crowds were like the Greek chorus in every Marvel comic. Like some battle is going on in the sky, and they go, "Look, up there. I've never seen anything like it." And the woman goes,
Well,
"Get my children away." You know, it was just it was you know
and speaking of Alex Ross, that reminded me a lot of Alex Ross Marvels. I don't know if you've ever seen
Oh,
that.
so good.
That's
Such
like
a
what
great
put
series.
Alex Ross on the
Yeah.
map, but so he does the whole thing in watercolors, and he actually revisited, the first appearance of Galactus in New York City in this very photorealistic kind of painterly way, and some of that stuff was in this movie was straight out of that, I felt like, with the New York bystanders just looking up at this impossible
Mhm. Yeah,
huge
yeah.
thing happening. It really reminded me of a lot of Alex Ross too. Yeah.
That was the Marvel touch. They
Yeah.
Yeah.
like I said, the crowds in a Marvel comic were the best.
And
The
the oth
energy.
yeah, and the other thing Jack was amazing at was machinery. He could draw the
Yeah.
most complex machinery, and the stuff I forget who said it. I wish I could remember, but I read this in some appreciation of Jack Kirby somewhere, and it stuck with me. He draws this complex machinery, and it looks like it actually works. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I don't know how he does it. It's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's obvious. That's how that would work."
And action, of course. I mean, he was the
Oh,
king of action, just explosive action, impossibly surreal. I hope we get to see the negative zone. I mean, I would love to see that where I remember there would be scenes where the Fantastic Four would be in the negative zone, and like it would be, I swear to God, it had to be like a piece of tinfoil was incorporated into the illustration. Like it just looked so insane. I
right.
can't, I
Yeah,
don't even know how he would achieve
the
it.
collage work that he did, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was great at the action. You mentioned Neil Adams, Bob. The thing, I have a Neil Adams Green Lantern drawing on my wall here near my office. What I love about him, because he was the Batman guy in the 70s, was he's really the beginning of the obsession with, kind of the detailed anatomical musculature of these characters, like really making them look like something out of an anatomy textbook, in a way that, the Silver Age artists weren't that interested in doing that, but with Neil Adams, it was very, like, you could see every sinew, every
Yeah,
detail
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
of Superman and of Batman's body, and that kind of became the norm. That became the standard going into the 80s and everything. You'd see the way they draw the characters, even today. You look at them and you go, well, how could you really see that much definition while they're wearing their costume? How do you see all the
Boy,
muscles through their shirt? Come on. It's the artist showing off, but Neil Adams was the first one to do that. I loved him.
I was the biggest fan of the Roy Thomas, Neil Adams X-Men, which was so influential, the book got canceled. those
Was that
those
when they
comic
had the all new X-Men? Was
no,
that them? No, no, no.
the X-Men
Yeah,
actually got canceled
They
and
did.
stopped
yep.
around
Yeah, I remember that.
1971, I think.
There was some Steranko covers in there, and the sales weren't there. Some great Neil Adams stories, and they started doing reprints
Yeah.
for a while,
Right.
and then they just canceled it.
And then they had the all different X-Men, which was the Chris Claremont and all that, and all
And
the
who
new
would have ever
characters.
thought that eventually they'd be the number one film property for comic heroes? For a long time, the X-Men movies were just it. So
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, when I was a kid in the 80s, they were like the coolest characters there were. It was all about the X-Men. It's so funny because the characters that were big in the Silver Age became kind of secondary. And now, they're really hot again because of the movies. Like, I remember Iron Man, Captain America, Thor. I loved those characters, but they were not really the top tier characters
Yeah, they
anymore
weren't
in
the
the
A-listers.
80s.
Yeah.
No, they really weren't. It was Spider-Man, it was anything mutant related, and it was the Punisher for whatever ungodly reason. Everybody loved the Punisher. And that's kinda changed a lot too because of the movie rights and everything else, and, Marvel turned around and said, "Well, who do we actually have the rights to do movies about? We
Yeah.
can't do the X-Men, we can't do Spider-Man. Okay, Iron Man. Yeah, let's try Iron Man," and they made him into a cool character again.
Yeah, I thought the, first Iron Man movie was pretty good. I really liked that one.
Yeah, I did too. I like that one. I mean, I feel like when that one came out, it really blew me away. It was the first MCU movie. It was the start of something, and it's good. But I feel like they so far surpassed that movie with the stuff that they did later on with all the Marvel movies. Like it's almost that movie's almost like an afterthought now. I wouldn't consider it one of their best ones, but it was pretty good. But Robert Downey Jr. is the reason why. I mean, he's
Yeah.
so great.
Yeah, he's just
So
phenomenal. I think I would love to see DC. They've been so hot and cold, mostly cold, unfortunately, with a lot of the movies they've put out. Um, I would love to see them tackle Jack Kirby's fourth world rather. Go into the New Gods, Mr. Miracle, the Forever People, and do them the right way, the way Marvel just did Fantastic Four the right way.
Well, they did. They had Darkseid and all those guys in the Justice League movie. But
Yeah, they had that.
terrible,
And they had like
terrible.
those insect sort of things, and it was just
Yeah.
yeah, it was sort of like a throwaway add-on kind of thing. I felt.
Also,
But,
because
oh man,
the weird thing is, and this happens sometimes. I mean, Thanos in the 70s was basically a ripoff of Darkseid. It was like
right?
Marvel trying to come up with their version of Darkseid. But now, because of the Marvel movies, Darkseid in the Justice League felt like a ripoff of Thanos, in reverse, because that's what audiences knew. And it did not work. It did not work. They did a lot of harm. Those movies, those Zack Snyder movies, they did a lot of harm to. If I was an executive at Warner Brothers or DC, I would be pretty pissed off at the harm that was done to the valuable intellectual property.
Yeah,
It almost felt for a while there that Batman, Superman, I mean, these iconic characters, it was almost like they were killed, like they just weren't even valuable anymore. They'd been ruined, and it looks like they might be digging out of that finally.
I hope so. I mean, even movies that you sort of feel like, oh boy, maybe they could push this rock up the hill and really, really do it right. Aquaman. It's like, oh, I had high hopes for that. It's like, oh, okay, it's not awful. It's not great. It's just sort of like, okay,
It was
I don't know.
it was
Yeah, yeah.
I
There's
to
too much.
me,
Meh.
I know there's been changes in the character, but to me, Aquaman should look like Van Johnson. He shouldn't
Yes.
look like Sika or whatever, whoever. I don't know,
I
but
mean, the character has changed a lot in the comics,
it
but I
has.
agree with you. Like, I just think of the platinum blonde, the coiffed hair. He's got to have the orange kind of scaly suit and
And the reason I say that is I used to have an Aquaman pen dispenser when I was a kid, and my mother sees it on my dressing and goes, "Who's that, Van Johnson?" Which I thought was just a great moment.
But he does ride a giant seahorse in the movie, and that was my one wish going in. I said it to my wife, who just wanted to see it because it's Jason Momoa, but I said, look, he better be riding a giant seahorse at some point in this movie. And when it happened, I was very happy.
It's amazing that people are still into all these old school characters after all these years, because a lot of the permutations on television weren't the best. the Aquaman comic, the TV show based on Aquaman with Aqua Boy and
Aqualad.
Aqualad
Aqualad, yeah.
oh, excuse me, and also a little walrus that used to follow him around. I'm even at 11, I'm sitting at home going, "What's this?"
I was very little. I loved that stuff, but I was really little. It's hard to watch now. Like I've
Yep.
tried to show it to my kids, and I'm just like, this isn't so good.
No, it's not. Can I ask something about the Fantastic Four film? When was Herbie introduced in
So
the comics?
Herbie. All right. So, well, my memory of it is I believe that Herbie was first introduced in one of the animated cartoon
I
series.
believe that's
Yeah,
correct.
the second
yes.
one. You're right.
So
the
I
second
think
network
what
one, right.
happened, if what I remember hearing was right, there was a time where they were adapting the Fantastic Four and they didn't want to include Human Torch.
They thought
And
it was too violent, yeah.
Right. They thought it was going to give kids the wrong idea. I don't know if there had been an incident maybe of a kid who tried to light himself on fire. I think that something like that may have actually happened. So they got rid of the Human Torch, and Herbie was actually the fourth member of the Fantastic Four.
On TV, yeah.
And then eventually they incorporated him into the comic book at some point. Like I remember there was a while where the Thing had left the team because Johnny Storm actually was in love with Alicia. So the Thing left the team and he was replaced by the She-Hulk in the 80s. John Byrne was doing the Fantastic Four, and it was the She-Hulk as the fourth member. So, I mean, the teams have changed. The members have actually changed over the years, but I know that in the cartoon, Herbie was actually the fourth member for a while. So I thought it was really cool that they included him because I liked Herbie when I was little.
And prominently, I was shocked.
He was like a Wall-E character, you know?
Yeah.
They made him like that.
Yeah.
It was very nice.
Hey, you take over,
I like when he's singing to the baby when the baby's in the
there's-
stroller.
I found him quite amusing, little Herbie. I thought it was not bad, but I just wanted to kind of ascertain that because, like, I know the first time I ever saw him was the second version of the Saturday morning Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And I knew I had never seen him in the comics, so I got confused watching it.
At the time, I remember Herbie not being very popular because people missed the Human Torch. The Human Torch was my favorite member of the team because I'm a little boy and I think it's really cool to see a guy on fire flying around. So at the time, it was kind of a cop-out, but again, it was something else I grew to love later on as I got older. So I'm glad he was in there.
Now, I've got two classic comic book fans sitting here. I have to give you guys the quiz. All right, you ready?
Sure.
Spinner racks, yes or no? Did you ever buy off of one?
Oh, yeah.
God.
I have one.
Yeah.
You own a spinner rack.
I own a spinner rack. Yes, I do.
Does it say, look, kids, comics?
No, it's not one of those. It's actually the topper of it
what it
is
said. Oh, yeah.
Classics Comics, which you don't see very often. It's Classics Comics. When I was a kid.
Not the Classics Illustrated?
Yeah, Classics Illustrated. You know,
my
Ivanhoe
God.
and Robin Hood
Yeah.
and the whole bit. Yeah,
Danny
it's a
Boone, yeah.
Classics Comics topper. As a kid, I worked in a stationery store, so we had the whole wall of comic books, and I used to go there to buy my comics all the time. And when I was there, you know, I'd be straightening out the rack, and I'd buy all my magazines there too, because I was a huge magazine fan. So, you know, I'm spending all my money at the store. I guess the guy working there figured, all right, he's going to spend all his money here anyway. I need some help. Let me hire this kid. So I wound up working there for a couple of years. And I'm in the basement putting the Sunday papers together one day, and I see he had off in the corner, all dusty, he had the Classics Comics spinner rack. So I said, "Can I have that?" He goes, "Yeah, take it. I'm just going to throw it out." So I bounced it on the back of my bike, rode it home, and still have it to this day, filled with a various assortment of Marvel, DC, and independent graphic novels.
I, like you, Craig, once used to have to put the Sunday paper together too. My first job. I had to put it together. I worked in a drugstore. We sold newspapers, and they came. The comics and the ads would come first, and then on Sunday the meat of the paper would come. But you'd have to wrap the comics around the paper. At least the Daily News. That's how it was, and it took a while. Far more than it should for like what was then a 20-cent newspaper. I mean, it would take a while, right?
Absolutely. So I don't know if I hadn't thought about this in 100 years, but talking about this reminded me. So the Sunday papers would come sort of in two shipments.
This is
right?
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you get like
Yeah.
the feature sections would come in first, and then the newsy sections would come in Sunday
Last, yeah.
morning or late Saturday night. But the feature sections would come all bundled up, and they would have some sort of protective paper or printed supplements that were used to protect the actual papers when they bound them up. And the store that I worked in, whatever those supplements were, was often it was pornography
Huh?
that they used to wrap up these papers.
Oh,
So
okay. All right.
I'll pull these bundles apart and it was like, okay, here's a Sunday. Well, wait, what? We'll put that off to the side over there.
Yeah.
It was very strange, but
Then there was
whatever
then
the
there was
distributor was doing, they were getting rid of their.
then there was
That's how they were
Parade
getting rid of that
magazine
stuff.
you'd have to shove in there, the whole thing. And remember the Parade would come in the New York Daily News? I believe that's
The
right.
parade,
Yeah.
the comic section. And,
Yeah. It took 45 minutes.
When I first started getting into buying comics on a weekly basis, it was the newsstand by me. So I was very lucky, to be growing up in the city where the newsstand was 2 blocks from my house. So I would just walk out of my door and go around the corner, literally around the corner. And it was not a spinner rack, but it was a rack. It was a stationary rack. It didn't spin. It was against the wall of the, the Tiamo magazine newsstand, right?
Yep.
It was just called. That's what it was just called. Tiamo, the cigars.
I have a Tiamo on the next block as God is my witness. I have a Tiamo.
And this was on
Same
18th
kind of
Avenue.
Mhm.
18th Avenue, the corner of 18th and 64th in Bensonhurst / Borough Park, Brooklyn. And they had this rack, and it was probably like about 5 or 6 comics high, 2 rows. So there'd be about a dozen comics on there at a given time. Now, the thing is, so I started regularly buying comics in about 1985. And I kept continuing. I collected them for almost 10 years regularly. But by the time it got to the end of the 80s, by 1990 or so, the comic book store thing was really kicking in. And I started hearing from my friends like, hey, listen, you should go straight to the comic book store. Forget the newsstand. Go to the comic book store because, number one, they're in better shape. They don't look like somebody tried to chew them up, right? They don't get wet in the rain. They're in better condition. Number 2, there's a wider selection. You could buy, more than just 12 at a time. And number 3, there's the ones that they don't need to have comics code approval. So there's the more mature comics in there. There's things that aren't, really for kids and things. And so I went to my first comic book store around that point, 1990. And from then on, I've always bought comics from the comic book store. But first few years, it was still the newsstand. Yeah.
Very cool.
I would sometimes even send my dad down there and be like, because I would get like about $5 a week. And this is very telling. I would get an allowance and I would spend it all on comics. So it would be $5 and I'd be able, at this time, they were like 65, 75 cents. So I would spend the $5 and get whatever that is, 6, 7 comics or something. And now forget it. I don't even think I could buy one for $5,
$5. I am so old. My first allowance was 50 cents.
Well, mine was originally $1.
What?
It got up to $5.
Oh,
Yeah.
man, you must have been
And
a
then
good kid.
sometimes I'd send my dad I remember one time I was doing my homework and I'm like, Dad, I can't break away. I'm doing homework. Can you just go down to the Tiamo and get me Superman Man of Steel #3? Yeah. Just please and he'd have to go there and figure out which one it was and bring it home for me. That's how into it I was.
You got a good dad there, man.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
Can't
Still
imagine
is.
my father. Hey, Pop, will you run to the Bel Air store?
Well, he was already going. All right, he was already going there for other stuff. I said, "While you're
cigars and stuff like
there,
that.
he could going to get his Marlboro Reds." I said, "While
There
you're
you go.
there, Dad, pick me up a couple of comics."
Do you guys remember the first comic that you ever read? I mean, we probably all got like Archie comics in Christmas stockings and stuff like that. But I remember 2 comics specifically. One was a Thunder Agents comic. Wally Wood, Tower, I think, was the publisher. I remember getting that in a Christmas stocking, going, "Oh, this is really interesting." But then it was in '68, I believe it was. My brother gave me a copy of, I think it was Captain Marvel #1.
Wow.
And I read that, and that just that just blew my mind. I was like, all right, this stuff is for me.
You know
That's what
something?
sort of flicked the switch on me.
I think I had my first comics when I was as young as 4 or 5 years old, but you can guess what they were. The Gold Key comics.
The Gold
Mickey
Key
Mouse,
stuff, yeah.
all that.
I think I had a Donald Duck, Walt Disney's Donald Duck, and some other character, and I remember I was sick in bed with the flu really bad. So my mom went out and got me a couple here, but this will keep you occupied, and it did.
Those are now the most valuable ones because nobody kept them. Nobody thought
That's
they
right.
would be worth anything.
Yeah.
I bought here and there, somebody would pick me up a comic when I was little, and I remember random ones, like there was a popular series called Power Pack in the early 80s where it was a superhero team of kids. So like, you know, I pick up Secret Wars. I thought that was a cool idea where you had the superheroes versus the supervillains on one planet and all this. But the one that really hooked me, I absolutely remember. I have a very specific story about it because that's the one that really got me. And it was a Doctor Strange comic book. It was in the middle of Secret Wars 2 storyline. So you had this character, the Beyonder, who is this all-powerful godlike being, and he takes human form and he comes to Earth. And it was Doctor Strange number 74. I remember the exact issue. My grandfather bought it for me. We were waiting to go into the movie theater to see Back to the Future. For real. And the newsstand was right across the street from it was the Fort Wayne Theater in Brooklyn, New York, on Fort Hamilton Parkway. And he picked up this comic book for me. And from that moment on, for at least the next 8 or 9 years, I bought comic books every single week of my life straight after that one.
Wow. That's something.
So one other bit of trivia. I think you know this, Bob. I don't know if you know this, Brian. Have either of you been a character in a comic book?
Huh?
No, I've not.
I can lay claim to saying that I have been. And I was actually a character written into a WCW comic book to sort of
I
us
see that,
into our
okay.
wrestling lives.
I
Yeah.
remember
All right.
those. Wow.
Oh my gosh. Did they make you hokey? Did you have like a press card?
I was like a trainer for Sting or something like that.
Oh, really? You weren't
back.
playing a PWI guy?
No. It was I was an actual character, and they used my name in it.
Now, how was the rendering of yourself? Were you pleased with it?
It was as anonymous and innocuous as could be. It looked nothing like me, but my name was in it though, so that was cool.
That
is cool. All right.
But yeah, I was in a WCW comic book.
I remember those WCW comics. What company? I'm trying to think of what company put them out. Was it Marvel?
That was Marvel.
Yeah.
Marvel.
Ron Wilson, if I'm not mistaken, might have been the artist.
Okay.
I know he also did. Ron Wilson also did art for Ring Kids, which was a comic strip that ran in Ring magazine for a time. I'm not sure, maybe a year or two, something like that.
Wow, I don't remember that.
Ring Kids, yeah.
Do anybody remember the packs of comics? 15 hit comics, $1 or whatever it was.
They still kind of do that, except they're not $1 anymore, but they do still do that.
I think Dollar General has those, right?
I remember
Ollie's.
Yeah. I remember finding one of these when I was like 12. Oh, God, I'm going to get the comics I like. And I pay my 75 or whatever, and I get it home. And the front was Iron Man. Yeah, I love Iron Man. Metal Men? Oh.
Hey, I think that's not Metal Men.
I like the Metal Men.
I actually like the Metal Men, too. I grew a little fond of them. That comic definitely had his tongue in his cheek, though. That's for sure.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
What other oddball comics were you guys into back when you were younger? I remember that. What was the one with the teen? Which one had Ball Boy? There was a character that used just a big fat ball that bounced, but he was a boy. Or am I misremembering that?
I don't know.
He used to bounce. Boom, boom, boom. It was a Teen Titan. I don't remember. Can't remember. But I remember Ball Boy for sure.
I remember I used to read Sugar and Spike. Remember that one?
No.
They were two infants. They were basically two babies that were able to talk to each other and understand each other's language, but all the adults and people around them couldn't understand what was going on. Sheldon Mayer, I think, was the creator of that. Very popular comic for a while.
I have one that was really weird that I got into when I was very little, and it was a DC comic. I don't know if you guys remember this. It was sort of like this alternate universe thing. They were a super team of animals, but they were like humanoid animals from another planet. It was called Captain Carrot and his amazing zoo crew. Okay.
I remember seeing those. They was a little after my time
Right.
collecting, but yeah, I remember seeing those.
So you had Captain Carrot. He was a rabbit. There was Pig Iron. He was a pig. There was one Star Spangled Poodle or something like. They were all. I forget the names, but they were all these like. They were these anthropomorphic animals, but they came from this planet where it was just populated by humanoid animals. And in fact, the hilarious thing is they wound up eventually incorporating it into the whole DC universe. Like you would actually have crossovers where, Superman would wind up in their universe, but it was clearly aimed at little kids, and I was one of those kids. So that was an early weird one for me, Captain Carrot.
Now I have to learn more about Star Spangled Poodle. That's right up my alley.
now I got it. Now I'm thinking I got to know what the members of the team were. I got to see if I can find it. But there was definitely a poodle. There was something having to do with Star Spangled something.
Somebody, yeah. Oh man.
Somebody should bring that back for a Netflix kid series.
I bought one comic around 1969, 1970 called Dolphin on DC. It was called Dolphin.
Okay, wait, I got it now. I got it.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it was Yankee Poodle.
Yankee Poodle.
Which makes more sense.
More sense.
Yankee Poodle. And it was like this red, white, and blue dog character. And
what else?
The American Eagle, Pig Iron, Alley Cat Abra, Rubber Duck. I remember that character, Rubber Duck, which was exactly what you thought. Like he had these rubbery powers, but he was a duck, but he had like Mr. Fantastic stretchy powers, Rubber Duck. Captain Carrot was the leader. Yeah, it was very, very silly and fun.
Hey, so can I bring something back to Jack Kirby here? Because I was preparing for this, and I was going through some of the stuff that I have here, and I became a Jack Kirby fan. Really became a fan of his work in 1971 when I laid down my $4 for something called the King Kirby Portfolio, and it was just great stuff. Not comic stuff, but it went through Jack Kirby's background and some editorial cartoons that he did under the name Jacob Kurtzberg, his real name. But the thing that struck me the most, and I actually saw somebody refer to this online not too long ago, is there's a drawing in here. So he famously served in World War II. If you go back to look at some of his war comics, they're very vivid from his own personal experiences. But there's a picture here, and it just shows his wife Roz, and it's captioned on the drawing, "The Missus, drawn in a foxhole," which in and of itself, you think, well, wow, that's pretty amazing. He's drawing this from memory in a foxhole. It's a beautiful drawing. But you read the caption of it, and it says, below, a drawing of Mrs. Kirby done from memory on the back of a piece of German stationery picked up off a dead enemy soldier.
Yeah, he was.
So think about that. Like he's wandering around the European theater, wherever the hell he was, and he's picking up paper off a dead guy, and that's pretty.
Those guys, they had those
piece of drawing right there.
They had those insane experiences. Those guys. My uncle had stuff like that. I remember him. The things that he had picked off of the bodies of dead Nazi soldiers. He had stuff like that, sir. I still have I have a Walter PPK. It's soldered shut, but I have it in my closet here, and it's from him, and he took it off a dead Nazi.
Wow. You guys may have seen this as I posted it on Facebook once. This is a Captain America, Grant Trey Lawrence era Jack in the Box.
That's a beautiful
put out for the cartoon.
I remember seeing you posting that. That's
as
amazing.
You go around here, right? It's the entire origin story on each side of but I don't. This will probably be cut out, but I might as well play it to show you that it still works after all these years, and it plays the original theme.
Look, when Captain America shows his mighty. Yeah, there it is. That's
And Captain
phenomenal.
America just popped out of the Jack in the Box. And
So
as you can see, it's a Jack Kirby rendering, Jack
yeah,
Kirby rendering, I should say, of Captain America.
that's an
I found
amazing
it in a
piece.
novelty store for marked down for like $1 or something.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jackpot
and
find. That's great.
yeah. I don't think there's very many of these, although I understand they made one for Spider-Man too.
Huh.
And
Oh, so it must be like a recreation then, I guess, or
I
something.
guess, and I'll tell you
That's a good
what,
piece, though.
I hope I don't, get sued for playing the song on my podcast. But, no, this is something I'm going, "Am I gonna buy this? Should I buy this? Elena's not into comics. Should I buy this?" And I bought it.
Good.
And she goes, "What are you gonna do with that?" And I went, "Well, it's gonna sit right over there amongst my memorabilia, my wimpy, art collage and everything else." My, Brad McFarlane, Bob and Doug McKenzie, he actually made, figurines of Bob and Doug McKenzie, which is still in its package, but I do have Wimpy and Eugene the Jeep, along with the big tray of hamburgers, also made by the same company. So,
Wimpy's full name, of course, being
J. Wellington Wimpy.
J. Wellington. Isn't it J. Wellington Wimpissinger? If I'm not mistaken, I believe so. I think
If you're uh, you're
I
a
thought it
better
was
fan
Jay
than I am.
Wellington Wimpy.
You're a better fan than I am if that's true. Is that true? Now you've got me
I think so.
intrigued.
E.C. Seeger, man.
That's right.
You know, when
Dimple
I was
Theater,
at
my friend.
E.C. Seeger, his assistant was Bud Sagendorf, who wound up after E.C. Seeger died. Bud Sagendorf did the Popeye strip for way longer. He did it like for many, 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 many years.
Mhm.
And when I was at WWE, the assistant publisher of WWF magazine was Brad Sagendorf, who
Oh,
was
wow.
the son of Bud Sagendorf. And I used to pick his brain about Popeye stuff all the time. And he would tell me these crazy stories because all these comic strip and comic book guys, they all knew each other. So they would have parties at the house. And he said Kurt Swan would show up. Jack Kirby would be there. There'd be
Oh
all
my
these
God.
comic strip guys there. Like they all knew each other. It's pretty crazy.
In the building I live in, upstairs used to be a guy that everybody referred to as, quote, Marvel Comics. He worked for Marvel, and to this day, I don't know which guy it was.
Wow.
But everybody,
Hey.
no, that's Mrs. Marvel Comics. There's Marvel Comics over there. Everybody just referred to him as Marvel Comics.
My wife is from Saugerties, as you know.
Yeah.
Bob, we've talked. Jamie's from Saugerties. Now, there was a local Marvel legend there who just died, and it was Joe Sinnott, who was
Really?
One
Yeah,
of the all-time great inkers, yes.
right.
Yeah.
And he went back to the beginning of Marvel, and he lived in Saugerties up until the guy lived to be almost 100 years old. I think he definitely died within the last 5 years.
Oh, good for him.
Joe
though,
Sinnott.
lasted
Yeah.
that long.
Yeah.
You know what? One of my favorite. This is going to sound really strange. You know what I was into as a kid? The letterer. What is it? Artie Simek.
Artie Simek. Yes.
Simek.
Well, he always,
Great
he always got the great credit.
Yeah.
Like everybody was like Jack King Kirby and Stan the Man Lee and poor Artie Simek.
You don't even have letterers anymore now. It's all just digital. There's
But
no one
like,
even.
wasn't he like the most clear letterer you ever saw? He was magic. He was just perfect every time. He was the Ken Morgan of letterers.
You know what comic books don't have anymore now? Because I still every now and then I'll still buy them. Rarely do things still grab me, but this has been a long time ago. In the last 20 years, even there is no more third-person narrative voice in comics. So, in other words, the only captions are just word bubbles. There is no more third person, like setting the scene and how Stan Lee would write the, meanwhile in the hall of this. That's gone. It's just completely just pictures and word balloons. That's the style now. It's been that way for a while.
I can't even imagine that. I haven't picked up anything new.
There is no more third person narration in comics.
The only comics I buy are the books that are reprints of Silver Age stuff. I'm just hooked on that stuff. I don't care. If people like the new stuff, I think that's great. But right
I get a
now,
lot of stuff. Yeah, I get a lot of reprints too, but in terms of current stuff, I have read a few things that I really like, and I would put one plug in for the Flintstones, which was a couple of years ago. Have you guys read that?
Is that the one where they made it like almost like a realistic version of the Flintstones, where they were trying to do them as if they were actual cavemen or something like that?
Yeah, but it was brilliant,
Yeah.
and I want to get the writer's name correct.
Like they were drawn in a very realistic way. They didn't.
Yeah, it was Mark Russell.
Okay, I remember this. Yeah.
Came out in 2016. It was great, and it dealt with a lot of contemporary issues, but in the Stone Age context. Just brilliantly written. Mark Russell, and he's done some other stuff. Something I think Billionaire Island, I think it was called. He also did a Snagglepuss comic that was really, really good.
Wait.
Yeah, Snagglepuss.
Heavens to Murgatroyd, tell me more about that.
I'm telling you, you need to look it up and read it.
A more serious Snagglepuss? Yeah,
it was a serious Snagglepuss, and it actually touches on all sorts of themes of gay rights and down in the village at the time in the 60s.
Did he still talk like Bert Lahr, or was?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
It's just brilliantly written. I can't give the highest recommendation.
Didn't they also because this was the whole thing?
Snagglepuss.
So Hanna-Barbera had made a deal with DC to do this line. And they were going to adapt them in this way. Didn't they also try to do a Scooby-Doo, or it was this
I think they did a Scooby-Doo. I haven't read that. They did a Jetsons that I read, which was okay.
Okay.
It didn't rise to the level of Snagglepuss and Flintstones.
So they just came out and admitted
exceptional.
They just came out and admitted that Snagglepuss is gay, basically.
More or less. Yeah, that's not even. You
realize
it's very nuanced and very multi-layered and extremely well written. So,
Craig, you realize you're the first person. You're the first person in the history of the world to say it didn't rise to the level of Snagglepuss. No one has ever uttered those words before.
That's true.
Does he ever say exit stage
right
even?
Yeah, it's a few years since I read it, but he does, I believe.
It didn't rise to the level of Snagglepuss.
My son.
God, I love podcasting. I'm telling you.
Bob, I'll bring it back to MeTV Tunes, because my son watches tons of MeTV Tunes, and these characters are all new to him. So Snagglepuss, I forget what show he was on, but whatever show he was a part of, he's seen Snagglepuss on MeTV Tunes, and we were watching The Wizard of Oz, and it's Bert Lahr as the Cowardly Lion, whose voice is the inspiration for Snagglepuss. And my son goes, "Daddy, why does the Cowardly Lion sound like Snagglepuss?"
A pretty good ear there.
Yeah, because he first knew of Snagglepuss.
I'm going to throw another underline to my recommendations here, because I really would love for you guys to read these. Snagglepuss and Flintstones both received Eisner Award nominations.
That's true. Yes, I remember this. Yeah. I remember all of this.
Yeah,
they were. Excellent. It was taken very seriously. Yeah.
Yep. Oh boy, it was great. It was great stuff. But the other, what else have I been reading recently? Ultimate Spider-Man is excellent.
I've heard
current
of that.
series. Ultimate Spider-Man.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Well, that's where that's where it's Miles Morales, right?
No, it's Peter Parker, but it's a different Ultimate universe. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
They sort of did a new Ultimate Universe about 2 years ago.
Those are really fun. Those Into the Spider-Verse animated movies. Those are really fun.
Those movies are great.
Yeah, they're really well done.
Boy. Well, we've talked about Silver Surfer and we've talked about Snagglepuss.
We've covered it all.
I didn't expect this when we started this conversation, but you know what? This has been a blast. And again, the old fogey in me is sitting here feeling very romantic about those days when I go to the Bel Air. We had a store in my little town called Bel Air for some reason, BEL-AIR. And it was a diner, and they had a magazine rack, and at one table you could sit at, read the comic books and stuff like that. And I just think back at those days and how much fun it was just take my little, 50-cent allowance and go buy a couple of comic books and have 20 cents left over. Yes, I go back to
You're going to buy this?
like-
It's not a library.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And
I got some of that. Yep.
back then you could get I started at 15 cents. How about you guys? What was the cover price when you 60?
65.
You young punk?
I came
But,
in at the tail end of 12 cents.
I
I
thought
sure
you were
did.
younger than I am. Are you younger than I am?
I don't know.
Maybe you're a couple years older than I am then, if it's 12 cents, because it went from 12 to
12 cents, yeah.
15, then 20.
Yep, 12.
I used to know
12,
the entire
15, then
lineage of the
25,
price.
and then backtrack to 20.
As long as it's not
That's
all
right.
in color for a dime.
And I think Corey
I
Strobe
I
told
still
me.
have that book somewhere.
I think Corey Strobe told me that they went back to 20 when either Marvel or DC started to do double-sized books,
Yeah.
and they stayed at the same price. So the other publisher went back down to make their books look cheaper.
Yeah, because DC had the 25-cent books for a while. And they had
This
the
is pre-inflation
50-cent.
and all that stuff. Yeah,
Boy, they had the 100-page super spectaculars for 50
Right.
cents, which were
Yeah.
great. And
They
that
were
was
great.
my real introduction into Golden Age stuff. Because you'd have the new stories, and then they would reprint stuff
Right.
from the past. So you'd get like the crazy Plastic Man stories or whatever else mixed in there. It was terrific.
Back then when they would reprint old stories back then, I don't know if you know, it was kind of gut wrenching, but today everything's scanned digitally so they could reprint any issues they
Right.
want. But back then, the only way to reprint an old issue or story, they would have to take apart an actual original comic book that they had in their archives. They would basically have to destroy it in order to reprint it. So every time an old comic was reprinted, they were destroying one of their old backlog classic issues to do
and
it.
they never looked as good, did they?
No.
The reprints never looked as good as originals back then.
Yeah. They couldn't back then. Yeah, because the process. They couldn't.
All right, here's an important question. Have either of you two ever won a Marvel No Prize?
Two of them.
I won once.
Okay, so I never won a no prize, but what the heck is the thing that PWI did? The fake award. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where you would mail in
Fake award.
No, not the real fake awards. The other fake award. No, don't you remember how the readers would mail in for the year-end awards? They come up with their own like goofy categories. What the heck was it called?
The
unoriginal
those
awards.
things.
Was that what?
Yeah.
I got one of those. I got one of those.
that idea from Steve Farhood, who did it in the boxing magazine.
Okay, I got one of those printed one year. I forget what it was, but
Unofficial official, yeah.
Unofficial official.
It was the unofficial official.
Yeah.
What was it? Do you remember what it was?
I don't remember what it was. I got it. No.
So
I have it somewhere. I have the issue.
So the no prize question reminds me of I was a writer at an early age, so I would send a lot of letters in. Of course, you got to send the letter in, point out the mistake to get the no prize. But I also had a number of letters printed in Marvel Comics, and in those days they would actually print your home address in the comic book. So it wasn't like Craig Peters, New York. It would be like Craig Peters, 40 Yale Street, Garden City, New York, 11530. the whole deal. And so one day, my mom says, "Hey, you got a letter in the mail." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I got a letter in the mail." It was a guy about my age. His name was John Cole, and he lived in Wales. And he saw my letter in the comic, and he said, "Garden City seems like a very nice place. Just wanted to introduce myself and say hi." And he wrote like a 5-page letter talking about comics and music, and it kicked off a pen pal relationship that lasted for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. And he introduced me to, he didn't introduce me to Monty Python, but he introduced me to like the Goon Show, which is one of the precursors of Monty Python. We would send magazines and paperbacks and various comics and music tapes and things back and forth to each other. It was, one little letter in a comic book and it kicks off something like that.
Now, what was your no prizes? I received a blue card in the mail, but the envelope was better than the card.
No, I didn't get the card. I got the
Like the envelope had little
envelope.
Marvel faces on it, and it said the name of the company. I said, "Oh boy, I know what this is."
Actually,
Oh,
I
it was
have it
on
over
the
here.
thing. It says, "Here is your official no prize, which you have just won!" Exclamation point in Artie Simek lettering.
Yes. I think I have mine downstairs in my archives, not in my office here. But yeah, no, it was a number 10 envelope, and
Right.
had the drawing on the front, and inside is a genuine Marvel Comics no prize, which you have won.
I just said that
And of
to
course,
Brian. Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
inside the envelope. Yeah, but it was just there was
Oh
no
no,
card or anything.
I got a card.
No, I didn't get a card. It was just an empty envelope that was sealed.
I think in my letter,
You got an actual prize, not a no
I got an
prize.
actual prize. It was
Yeah.
it was it was typed on a card, but it also insulted me at the same time. It said I had pointed out that a previous letter writer made an error, and I corrected the error. He says, "Yep, you got that right, pal. We really appreciate it. Sorry you didn't like George Russo's penciling. We've considered one of the greats going back to the 50s. Well, each to their own." That's what it said. And they didn't like the fact that I was critical of old-time comic artists because he replaced someone else in one issue of Iron Man I didn't take to his penciling. So that was it.
How dare you? Did you know there was a Marvel Comics show in, I want to say, I think it was Radio City Music Hall?
I saw it as a kid. No. You know what? There was a DC one that I saw where it was DC and the Looney Tunes characters together.
Really?
Because they're all owned by Warner Brothers even back then in the 70s.
Yeah.
And it was like live action DC superheroes and Looney Tunes characters. I do remember that, and it was Radio City Music Hall as well. Or maybe it was the Felt Forum. One of those places. My parents took me to see it. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to see the Marvel one in Radio City. I think it was probably 74, something like that, maybe 73. I'm sure there's stuff online about it, but yeah, it was a weird thing. I mean, Marvel was just so red hot at the time. They're like, all right, let's sell some tickets and do something. And Stan Lee came out and said some stuff, and they set up. Remember, like the old overhead projectors you would get in science class with the clear plastic, and so Herb Trimpe's coming out and he's drawing Hulk's face on the clear plastic, projecting up on
Yay.
the screen. It was,
I got this. I just thought of this story because you're talking about different pencilers replacing other pencilers. I have a Jack Kirby story that actually relates to my family that I'd like to tell before I forget. I don't know how much time we have, but
as much as you need, my friend.
So my grandmother's first cousin was Pete Costanza, who was the co-creator of the original Captain Marvel at Fawcett Comics. So he was C.C. Beck's assistant, and he helped to create Captain Marvel. I think he even came up with the name, maybe. But so Pete Costanza wound up in the 60s working for DC. And he was doing Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, I think was one of the books that he did for a while. He took over for Kurt Swan when Kurt Swan left or was doing other things. And so he had a stroke at a certain point, I think around that time, and he had to kind of stop. And he lost the use of one of his arms, his drawing arm. So it was right around the time that Kirby made the jump from Marvel to DC, like you were talking about, when it was a huge deal in comics that DC got Jack Kirby, and they rolled out the red carpet. Now, eventually he would do things like he created the new gods and all that stuff there, eventually. When he first got there, they said to him, "We will give you any book you want. Just tell us which one you want. We will give it to you." And he goes, "Give me Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen." And they were like, "Are you serious? That's kind of a lame book,
right.
That's not even one of our."
I've heard this story. Wasn't it that he wanted the worst selling book to prove his mettle?
I haven't heard that. That may be, but the version I've heard because of my family was that he said, "No, I want that book because Pete Costanza is retiring because of his stroke. I don't want to put somebody out of a job. Rather than, I don't want to take over a book that's being done by somebody else that's going to be out of a job.
Right.
I'd rather take a book where the artist is retiring. And that's how he got Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, because he was a nice guy who didn't want someone to lose their job.
Wow. He was. Yeah, he was very cognizant of, he was a sort of a professional's professional that way. Now,
Yeah.
Kirby and Jimmy Olsen, of course, leads to one of the greatest DC two comics in a row that he created, which was the infamous Don Rickles guest
Yes.
spot in
Yeah.
Jimmy Olsen
Yep.
with
Yep.
maybe the greatest cover line on a comic of all time. Kirby says, "Don't ask, just buy it."
Right. It's a big photo of Don Rickles right
Yeah,
in the
it's a big
center of the cover.
circle of Don Rickles, and like, what the hell's going on here? Don't ask, just buy it.
Those were the days. Holy smokes! Great story there, Brian. It's
It's
you
kind
got
of
a
a
million of
family
them.
legend.
You've had quite the lineage of entertainment people running out of your spear as you were growing up.
Yeah, that's why I think my next book might just be the family memoir. I might just put the wrestling on hold for a minute and just write a book about my family. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, you probably should because it's a fascinating story. I mean, the show that we did about your great uncle is still it's one of my pinnacles as a podcaster because it's like that's what I want. That's what I want to present. Stuff that isn't always like right in front of you, but something you could sink your teeth into from a human nature type of thing. I thought it was just a great show, and I really appreciate it. And Adam loved it. Adam Barrett,
Thank
the
you.
other guest, we
That's
all had a
fun.
blast doing it. And I think you suggested Adam, which was a great suggestion because it was like he knows everything about theater, and he's been in that spot. You know, Adam has been
Well,
in that exact spot. So
yeah, because I heard you guys do your theater show, and I remember just thinking I could really add something to this because this reminds me of stories that my uncle told me.
mhm. So it was just a perfect blend, and kind of like a perfect blend we had tonight, talking about old comic books and the new movies based on the old comic books. You guys have fun?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Talk about this stuff all day long.
I
Love it.
know we've gone for an hour 45. We better wrap it up, I guess. I want you guys to just tell the general public where they can find you. Brian, you start because you're got a lot of irons in the fire, and he's a podcaster and a writer, and just tell us the whole schmear.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I should mention, since we've had this whole conversation, if there's people that are hearing me for the first time and listening to this topic, I published a book 2 years ago called Superheroes, The History of a Pop Culture Phenomenon from Ant-Man to Zorro. And it's exactly what it sounds like. And I'm very proud of it. And, people know me most from books about wrestling. So yeah, I'd love it if people gave that one a look. But I always say wrestling and comic books, it's like peanut butter and jelly. There's just such an overlap in fandoms there. There really is. And of course, my next book, which will be out in just a matter of weeks now, is back to wrestling, Irresistible Force, The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon. And I would like to say, I think this is the first time I'm saying it publicly, although I might announce it on social media before this podcast comes out, is that I can officially say I will be recording the audiobook myself. They've instead of going for an outside person, they're going to use myself. I don't know when it's coming out. It will be later than the September 30th publication date for the print book, but I will be narrating the audiobook myself.
I just want people to know, and I haven't even mentioned this to Brian yet, but I finished it. I have read the book.
Oh,
My boy, you've done it again. All right.
Bob, you've been very quiet about it. I thought maybe you
No,
gave up on it.
I
or
didn't
something.
give up on it. I've been in and out of surgery, as you know, but I haven't given up on it, and I did finish it. And I want you to know that this is going to be big stuff. It's really another heartfelt, seriously researched look at someone. When you told me you're writing a book about Gorilla Monsoon, I'm thinking, why has anybody thought of this before? But you were the first one to think of it, and I gave you the
Well,
props for that because most people would look at the champions but Gorilla Monsoon was so unique in that he was a wrestler. He was behind the scenes for us. He was the gorilla position guy. He was a TV announcer, on and on and on. A
yeah.
fascinating story about a really fascinating guy. And you know what? I wish I'd met him. He sounded like a cool dude to me.
I know. I wish I'd met him too. Like you read in the book, I came so close. But I got to know his family, and you know what? They're going to be coming to the book release party. So
Wow.
anybody that comes down, I haven't announced the date yet, but on the location, but they plan to be there. His daughters, his grandsons, they will be there. Yeah.
Craig, did you ever get a chance to meet Gorilla Monsoon?
I did not. I probably brushed past him once or twice backstage at the Garden, but never really met him, I couldn't say.
Yeah, he was always in an official capacity. You feel like you couldn't approach him because he was always working at something.
Right.
Right? He was always working.
Very imposing presence.
I can imagine.
You
Not
could
surprising.
easily forget. You could easily forget how big he was. That was the weird thing. It's like because he's in the world of wrestling where everybody's big, and also because a lot of the times he was sitting down as an announcer, you could forget how massively huge the guy was. He was a huge human being.
Yep. And anything else? Talk about your podcast too, Brian, if you would.
Sure.
Everything else, he still writes for PWI and every single issue.
Yeah. I
and
still
other
write
things.
for Pro Wrestling Illustrated and Inside the Ropes. I'm somehow walking that line. I think I'm the first wrestling writer in history to ever write for wrestling magazines from two different companies at the same time. I may have some kind of record there, but I've got the podcast Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian R. Solomon, which is kind of a nostalgia podcast, a little bit like your Outdated Wrestling Hour, where I have different guests every week and the subject is dictated by the guest. And I've also got a Patreon that's associated with the podcast that I'd love for people to check out. It's patreon.com/shutupandwrestle. And, there's a lot of free stuff on there. I put scans of some of my old articles and things on there. But for premium subscribers, I do these kind of watch-along commentaries of classic wrestling shows. So you can watch the show and you can listen to me blabbering about the show. And it's this fun thing I do on there. I'm trying to build more subscribers on there, piggybacked off the podcast. So people might want to check that out. It's patreon.com/shutupandwrestle.
There you go. Craig, what's with you? What's happening? Tell people how they get a hold of you and anything else that's going on.
I got
very
nothing
interesting
to plug. No, I got
Nothing
nothing
to
to plug.
plug.
I'm still a working stiff. You can see me floating around on Facebook and Blue Sky, or wandering along the boardwalk in Asbury Park with a copy of Cliff Nesterhoff's book that I'm catching up on, or maybe the Snagglepuss Chronicles. Rereading that.
I still can't. Of all the things we discussed in the show, that's the one I can't get over. First of all, I never heard of it. Secondly, now I have to see it because it's like
you have to read it. It's brilliant. But
I just have to. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about it, the three of us are three generations of PWI. You were there.
Well, how many
holding
years
glory.
among all three of us? So 15 years for me.
I was 8.
Well,
Really?
I've been writing regularly for them now for 6, but I've written occasionally on and off for the last 18 years for them, but just not all the time. But the past 6 years, it's been constant every
Well,
month.
Craig, I was counting the time when I left the company. I still freelanced for a while. You remember that?
Right. Absolutely.
So I counted that as part of because my name was still in the book. So what the hell. But in any event, here we have our PWI lineage here, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. We're all very proud of that. And for those of you not into wrestling, these are two of the most learned individuals and fun individuals I have a pleasure to know. It's Craig Peters and Brian R. Solomon. Guys, another groovy show, man. We're going to have to do another one.
Always great getting together with you guys.
Now,
A lot of fun.
let's think about EC Comics, right? We're going to think about doing EC Comics, right, Craig?
Yeah, boy, that's my other major comic obsession is the EC Comics of the early 50s.
And I know this is true because when I sat across from your desk, you had an EC Comics cover on something. I remember seeing that.
Yes, I probably did. I don't remember what it was back in the day, but yeah, I'm lucky enough to own 7 original EC Comics. They're extremely collectible these days. Tales from the Crypt, in particular, and certain issues with specific covers can go well into the many thousands of dollars for a mid-grade issue. But I do have 4 original EC Comics that were part of the Jerry Garcia personal collection, which is pretty neat.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, you can dig into EC. I mean, it's Stephen King cites them as a huge influence. There's ties to Twilight Zone and any sort of like short fiction with the O. Henry twist ending.
Creepshow.
Is them Creepshow? Absolutely, Creepshow was very direct homage to the EC Comics, and of course, the HBO Tales from the Crypt series, which was phenomenal.
My dad loved EC Comics in the 50s. That was like his peak era when he was a kid. He wasn't really into superhero comics. I remember the one thing he liked, he told me about, was he used to read the Plastic Man comics from Charlton. Like he liked Plastic Man.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it was strictly EC. And because those were hotter at the time, the horror comics and stuff.
Yeah, the horror comics. And it was the source of the Comics Code Authority.
That's right. And when I was big into my comics, that's what he would always say to me. Oh, I used to read the EC comics when I was a kid, and Tales from the Crypt and the Vault of Horror and all that stuff.
And morphed into Mad Magazine. So
yeah.
Frank Frazetta worked for them. Jack Davis, who was just a hugely prolific illustrator.
Mentioned Charlton, which is like every 17th comic book was a Charlton when I was growing up. Right. I didn't buy them often, but every so often I'd grab one.
Right. Was Plastic Man Charlton, or maybe he was Quality Comics? I don't remember.
I think it was in the Golden Age Quality Comics. Well, Charlton famously was
Quality Comics.
Yeah. Charlton was Quality. They famously on really crappy paper.
Charlton Comics they had Captain Atom and Blue Beetle.
Yeah. But they also had all the many ghosts of Dr. Graves.
The Question.
Yeah.
We could go on all night. I'm telling you, our comic, and I love shows like this because they're jogging my memory. I haven't thought of Blue Beetle in decades. So,
Charlton was printed on crappy paper, and the reason they did comics was they owned the printing presses, and I forget what it was that they printed during the daytime, but they wanted to keep them running and make money, so they would print the comics at night.
I didn't know
on these presses, and they would use the crappiest paper.
Well, DC wound up buying.
Yeah. They didn't pay well.
DC bought them out in the 80s and just kind of absorbed all their characters into the DC universe. Actually.
There's one last question I don't know the answer to, and I'll just ask this to both of you. Maybe you know better than I do. Were the DC and Marvel comic artists and writers akin to termite terrorist workers for Warner Brothers cartoons? In other words, everybody was famous, but were they getting rich? That's the question.
I feel like the Marvel bullpen was definitely like that. I don't know about DC as much, but I definitely got that sense from the Marvel bullpen that they were. There's a great book, about the history of Marvel Comics. Came out like about 10, 12 years ago. It's got an orange cover. I forget the name of it. It's really good, and it gets into detail about what that bullpen was like in the 60s and 70s, and I think it was a little bit like the termite terrorist thing. Yeah.
I wonder if DC was any different.
Only thing I know about DC from back then is the editors-in-chief there were supposedly like real tyrants.
I heard too, yeah.
There was Julius Schwartz and Mort Weisinger, who they were like these iron-fisted guys that you hear these horror stories about. That's one thing I remember. I saw Julius Schwartz at a comics convention. He must have been 8,000 years old then. And this was the guy who basically created the DC multiverse, all the Earths and everything, because he was too lazy to figure out what to do with all the Golden Age characters. So they just created all these alternate Earths and things. But that's one thing I like. Mort Weisinger, I remember hearing stories about him with the Superman comics, how they blamed a lot of the kind of weak, lame stuff that Superman and Batman would do in that era on Mort Weisinger. Like he was just coming up with these ridiculously dumb story ideas and things. And basically, like the idea was he just really looked down on comics. He was just like, who gives a crap? It's just for little kids. They don't care what we do from issue to issue. And he didn't really have a sense that these characters you are the caretakers of these really important characters. You can't just do anything with them. You have to actually have some kind of sense of responsibility, That's one. I do remember reading stuff like that.
The Tony Khan of his era. So in any event, I had to get a wrestling jab in there. Two of my favorite people right here. It's Brian R. Solomon, Craig Peters. Guys, I can't thank you enough for being here, and I hope you had as much fun as I did.
I'm happy to do it. Thanks for having me, as always, Bob. Like I said, anytime I could talk about other stuff, I'm happy to do it.
Absolutely. If you had twice as much fun as I did, then I had half as much fun as you.
Can't beat that one. Attention, Gen Xers. If you'd like to explore the era that appeals to you, look no further than GenerationXWire.com. The generation who grew up with elite in entertainment, music, movies, TV, books, pro wrestling, and more finally has a one-stop destination for all their Gen X needs. From Aerosmith to Batman to the Killer Bees to the Twilight Zone, there's something for everybody at GenerationXWire.com. You won't find a more eclectic mix of pop culture content than at the leading website that specializes in the greatest generation, GenerationXWire.com. Check it out today. We packed about 6 pounds of comic book information into a 2-pound bag on this one because I had a blast talking to my wonderful friends about something we were all really, really into in our youth. Or as Fred Gwynn would say it, Ute. Or should I say Joe Pesci? You'll get the reference because it's outdated. In any event, we hope you had a lot of fun on this episode. Let's say our goodbyes now. Take a look at our podcast. It's outdatedentertainmenthour.buzzsprout.com. You can find all of our shows there at a click of a button and learn more about the show. Hit the About button. You'll find out where you can find the show on your favorite podcast apps. Write to us, outdatedent, that's outdatedent @gmail.com. I am finally catching up on my mail there. So if you've been waiting to hear a reply, you're going to get one. I promise. I write back to everybody that writes, unless you call me bad names, which has happened. It has. You know how the media is. You take the good with the bad. The Outdated Entertainment Hour and the Outdated Wrestling Hour productions of Bob Smith Podcast, for whatever that's worth. I hope you had fun. We're going to be back in a couple of weeks with some more entertainment. We're going to entertain you. If you're as old as we are, or as old as I am, I have having a blast looking back at the stuff that we've talked about on the show. We had a show with Steve Ginnerly about toys that got me all choked up because he brought back memories of Christmases of the past. Relish our moments on this mortal coil. I think it's important. Get the most out of life because it's short. So, hey, enough of my yakking. My name is Bob Smith. This is the Outdated Entertainment Hour podcast. Until next time, here's somebody who will never be outdated as long as there are records. Ringo Starr says, peace and love, brothers and sisters. Peace and love.